Congressman McEachin, thank you for hosting this event. It's great to be here today. And also quickly, my thanks to Chris Espinosa, who helped to turn this around on a dime. Thank you both. My name is Alan Spears. I'm the Director of Cultural Resources for the National Parks Conservation Association. NPCA serves as the leading voice of the American people on behalf of their national parks. And this is our centennial anniversary, so we've turned 100 years of conserving and protecting the nation's most important natural, cultural, historic, scenic, and recreational resources. By virtue of the sites they manage and the stories the agency interprets and shares, the National Park Service is one of the largest stewards of African American history and culture in the United States. All the elements of the African American experience from Civil War to civil rights and beyond are captured in the stories and the resources preserved by NPS. As we reflect upon the achievements and struggles and contributions of Black Americans during this Black History Month, we must recognize that national parks, NPS historians and interpretive rangers, and the historic and cultural resource programs they manage are making our history more inclusive, relevant, and compelling. And that in the commemoration of the African American experience lies the key to engaging a more diverse constituency for national parks and public lands. When Carter G. Woodson established the Association for the Study of Negro History, Life and History in 1915, the going consensus was that African Americans had done little to contribute to the growth and development of the United States, and that people of African descent had made no lasting contributions to civilization. These views were held by academics, politicians, and lay people alike, and used to justify everything from segregation to political disenfranchisement to lynching. Yet Woodson and other historians like W.E.B. Du Bois understood that the only way to exclude the African American experience from American history was by ignoring or deliberately overlooking the truth. Now, Woodson wasn't the only person who fought to gain a proper respect and understanding for African American history and culture, but he did develop standards of scholarly research and the vehicles for promoting his findings and those of others who were focused on highlighting Black achievement. Woodson's Journal of Negro History, now the Journal of African American History, was first published in 1916 and remains the leading scholarly publication in the field of African American history. Negro History Week, now Black History Month, was another one of Woodson's concepts for promoting awareness and the pride in African American history, and it's fitting that Dr. Woodson's home was added to the National Park System in 2006. The Park Service, like the nation, was slow to embrace the preservation of African American history and culture, but they began by adding sites like the George Washington Carver National Monument in 1943. More sites followed, including Booker T. Washington National Monument in April of 1956 and the Frederick Douglass Home here in DC in 1962. But it was really through the 1970s and 80s that the number of African American sites grew exponentially in the National Park System. And recently, Presidents Bush and Obama have added to that number of national parks by using the Antiquities Act to establish places like the African Burial Ground in New York, at Fort Monroe, and Birmingham Civil Rights. Currently, 418 of the units that comprise our national park system, of those 418, over 30 are known as African American experience sites. And again, that makes the National Park Service one of the largest stewards of African American history in the country. Now, to carry this work more fully forward into the 21st century, NPCA recommends a couple of things. We'd like to see a cultural resource challenge initiated for the National Park Service. We need to make sure that they are making use of best practices and that having historians and archivists and researchers is not considered a luxury but a priority for an agency that has a large national park system, 2/3 of which is historic and cultural by nature. We want full funding for the Historic Preservation Fund. It has never been funded at that $150 million a year authorized funding level. And we want an increase in the budget for the National Heritage Area Program. But for this committee to consider, we also would like to see the 400 Years Commission of African American History be charged with the mission of bringing together superintendents of all the African American experience sites in the National Park System, those 30 and more sites, so that they can actually talk about what that history means and work together to promote it during this anniversary year and beyond. Now, the work of protecting and preserving our history will never be finished. And although there will always be more stories to preserve and interpret, we can and should take a moment during this Black History Month to acknowledge the role the National Park Service plays in ensuring that the African American experience will never again be overlooked or deliberately ignored. Thank you.